The United States birth rate fell again in 2018 from 3.7 million births, almost 3.8 million births, to the lowest number of births in 32 years. Not since 1986 has the United States seen so few babies born. Don't we want to continue to have the liberties and freedoms that we have? We don't want to lose that. We don't want to hand it over. And one way we can lose that, if we stop having babies, if we stop having families. We're not making new Americans like we used to. That our general structure is at risk. Part of the trend also reflects a cultural shift as more Americans delay marriage and child rearing. While women in their 20s have historically given birth to the most babies in the United States, women in their early 30s had a higher birth rate in 2017 for the first time ever. The idea of career first and family second. Friends, societies don't maintain themselves with those priorities. The latest birth rate data put the United States farther away from a viable replacement rate, the rate that we must produce children in order for our nation to survive. That means each family needs to produce 2.1 children. What does the future of the U.S. really look like? Will we maintain our nation? Will we fade out of existence for lack of simply being willing to produce? Now, this is not about white babies. It's not about black babies. This is not a racial issue. This is about Americans being seduced into underbreeding ourselves into oblivion by virtue of seeking perceived pleasures and conveniences instead of families. Pleasures and conveniences, my friends, they're short-lived. Families are a legacy. We're not growing. We're disappearing, especially if Planned Parenthood keeps growing, doing what it does. You're probably asking, what really does godlessness have to do with the birth rate? It's a fair question. Statistics from a study reported in the Washington Post gives us this indication on birth rate. Protestant and evangelical Christians produce 2.5 children per family, on average. 2.5. Now that's well above the 2.1 necessary to maintain our population. Catholics, 2.3 children per family, and Jews, 2.0. Atheists and agnostics are way behind. They're way back. Atheists average 1.6 children per family, and agnostics average 1.3 children per family. So if atheists and agnostics had their way, I suppose, and we all lived like they did, we wouldn't be here in 3 generations or 4. You wouldn't be able to be free and choose your career, choose your life. In order to keep your nation from falling behind and going extinct, in a matter of several generations, you need to produce 2.1 children per family just to stay level. Now, once again, you might be out there and you might cry, climate change and overpopulation. You might say, we're simply being environmentally conscious. We don't want to have kids because of, carbon footprint and all that. I say to you, propaganda. You have believed the lie of the agenda for the 21st century. The new globalist idea of life and politics. Now, let's think about overpopulation for just a second. Let's put things in perspective. It's good to get a visual, right, of things so you can really get your head around. Now, we're told that we're so overpopulated, we're going to run out of food. The world's going to end because we're warming the planet and we're having too many children, right? That's what we hear in the mainstream news. Well, here's a little fun fact for you. Did you know that the entire population of the planet, all 7 point whatever billion that there are, could comfortably stand shoulder to shoulder with a little room in a 500 square mile area? Now, you wouldn't want to do that, but the point, just visualize it. Everyone on the planet right now could stand in one 500 square mile area. For example, a city the size of Los Angeles. Everyone could stand there together at one time, all the people on the planet. Now, this might be a very unpleasant gathering, but the point is made. Overpopulation is vastly oversold by the same political movements selling you man-made climate emergency. It's a good idea to check the facts and relax. Now, it does not mean that we should not be good stewards of the planet. Obviously, we were given our home by God, who commanded us to be good stewards of the earth. It's also important to note the sector of our population who are more likely to have abortions. The point is that today, in the name of convenience, in the United States alone, we maim and destroy and brutally kill, on average, 700,000 children who just so happen to be geographically located in their mother's womb. Life is life, my friends, regardless of your address. If you're alive, you're alive. And if you want to reasonably claim autonomy over your own body, you're going to have to be consistent and to allow others to claim autonomy over their bodies too. Well, that just so happens to include the person whose body is growing inside your body. They also have a right to autonomy over their body. You don't really have a right over that person's body. In great numbers, the reason for abortion is the desire to pursue a career instead of having a family, which again is just pure convenience. The amount of abortion taking place for legitimate medical reasons where the mother and or the baby are in jeopardy of dying is extremely low. It's insignificant. Don't give us that argument about how concerned you are for future generations, because according to your desire to live like adolescents seeking as much pleasure and gain as you can, our society, our nation, won't survive anyway if we continue down this path of seeking ultimate convenience and have this aversion to building families. That mindset, that even works completely against the theory of evolution, which appeals to survival of the fittest, not survival of the coolest, survival of the most successfully employed, or survival of the single, non-reproducing species. Well, how do we tie all this together? What does religion have to do with all of this? In the United States, the decline of Christianity continues at a rapid pace. My friends, it is no coincidence that the birth rate, the amount of children we're having, that we've fallen below the rate at which we could sustain our population, coincides with the decline of Christianity, which is happening at a rapid pace. Pew Research Center telephone surveys conducted in 2018 and 19, 65% of American adults describe themselves as Christians. That is down 12 percentage points over the past 10 years. Meanwhile, the religiously unaffiliated share of the population, consisting of people who describe their religious identity as atheist, agnostic, or no particular faith or religion, now stands at 26%, up from 17% in 2009. Both Protestantism and Catholicism are experiencing losses of population share. Currently, 43% of U.S. adults identify with Protestantism. That is down from 51% in 2009. A 10-year period, folks. A drop that's nearing 10%. 1 in 5 adults, 20%, claim to be Catholic, down from 23% in 2009. All subsets of the religiously unaffiliated population, a group known as the religious nuns, not like the flying nun, but the N-O-N-E-S, the religious nuns, have seen their numbers grow quite substantially. The numbers of self-described atheists has doubled from 2009. Let me say that again. The numbers of self-described atheists has doubled in the past 10 years. Agnostics now make up 5% of the U.S., up from 3% a decade ago, and 17% of Americans now describe their religion as nothing in particular, and that is up from 12% in 2009. So all across the board, we see gains in atheism and agnosticism, and losses in Christians, and at the same time, a severe drop in our birth rate. Now, as a note of methodology here, each of these polls include one basic question about religious identity, and that is, what is your present religion, if any? And the possible answers are you Protestant, Roman Catholic, Mormon, Orthodox, such as Greek or Russian Orthodox? Are you Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu? Are you atheist, agnostic, something else, or nothing in particular? Plenty of selections there. And still we see a sharp uptick in atheism and agnosticism and a sharp fall in Christianity. The Christian share of the population is down, and religious nones, N-O-N-E-S, have grown across multiple demographic groups: white people, black people, and Hispanics, men and women in all regions of the country, and among college graduates and those with lower levels of educational attainment. Religious nones are growing faster among Democrats than Republicans. Though the ranks are growing in both coalitions, there are more that identify on the left side of the spectrum. And although the religiously unaffiliated are on the rise among younger people and most groups of older adults, their growth is most pronounced among young folks. The same group of people who are not having kids are growing. You see atheism and agnosticism growing the most in that group. Why is it important to be here doing this? That's why. The data shows a wide gap between older Americans, called baby boomers, and members of the silent generation, and millennials in their levels of religious affiliation and attendance. More than 80% members of the silent generation, those born between 1928 and 1945, describe themselves as Christians. 3/4 of baby boomers identify as Christians. In stark contrast, only half of millennials describe themselves as Christians. 4 in 10 say they are religious nones, N-O-N-E-S. And 1 in 10 millennials identify with non-Christian faiths. Only about 1 in 3 millennials say they attend religious services at least once or twice a month. Roughly 2/3 of millennials, 64%, attend worship services a few times a year or less often, including about 4 out of 10 who say they seldom or never go. Now, indeed, there are as many millennials who say they never attend religious services as there are who say they go at least once a week. And that number is about 20%. Taking the margin of error of these surveys into account, the number of adult Christians in the United States as of 2009 could have been as low as 176 million or as high as 181 million. Now, today there are roughly 23 million more adults in the United States than there were in 2009. That's 256 million as of July 2019. About 2/3 of them, 65%, identify as Christian, according to the 2018-19 Pew Research report, or estimates. This means that there are now roughly 167 million Christian adults in the U.S., with a lower bound of 164 and upper of 169 given the survey's margin of error. Meanwhile, the number of religiously unaffiliated adults in the U.S. grew by almost 30 million over the same period. And what else do we see? A sharp fall in producing more Americans. Now, there's a gender gap as well in American religion. Women are less likely than men to describe themselves as religious nones. That's the rate of about 23 versus 30%. And women are more likely than men to say they attend religious services at least once or twice a month. Women and men together have grown noticeably less religious over the last decade. Once again, a rise in non-religious and a fall in specifically Christian. The share of women who identify as Christian has fallen by 11 percentage points from 80% to 69% over that same period. Wrong direction, my friends. Christians have declined and nuns have grown as a share of the adult population in all 4 major U.S. regions. Catholic losses have been most pronounced in the Northeast, where 36% identified as Catholic in 2009, compared to today, where it's 27%. So all of these moves, folks, all of these moves are around 10%. All of these, where we see Christianity or a religious affiliation, all of those have dropped 10% or more over the past decade. Among Protestants, declines were larger in the South, where Protestants now account for 53% of the adult population, down from 64% in 2009. At least 10% in all cases. If you thought that the apologetics empire on YouTube was not a big deal, now you know the truth. Now you know why that we're attempting to vastly increase the presence of Christian YouTubers. Because atheists and nuns far outnumber followers of Jesus Christ, biblical Christians in the purest sense, on this platform. And you can now see that it's not a matter of pride. It's not a matter of just wanting to be the big monkey on the block. Now, we intend first, always, to win souls for Jesus Christ, to share the gospel. That's number one. But also, we're working to preserve our free Republican democracy and fighting to encourage families to grow and to stay together and to create more Americans, more Christian babies, for sure. And we do this not only to preserve ourselves, but we want all of you to have the benefits of a free society. A free society with liberties where you can choose to worship or not worship however you like and follow your dreams in any way you wish that does not interfere with the basic freedoms of others. And you know how that happens? You need Christianity in your country, and you need it to be strong. Christians will fight for your freedom. Christians will fight for your liberty. Christianity is the faith of freedom, and importantly, it is also the faith of preserving freedom. Build families. By all means, be fruitful and multiply. And God bless you all.